And while we're waiting for that, here's the Texans 5 picks by Bill O'Brien, the GM. And they're part of our question of the night. Which emoji best describes how you're feeling about this group? Hit up KHOU.com/vote now or that KHOU 11 app and be a part of the show. And once again, we're in the Great Day Houston studio, and unfortunately, no Matt, no Daniel. They're both off tonight, so we'll roll on without them. Thankfully, we have a special guest from Pro Football Focus, which knows these prospects inside and out. It's Anthony Treash, the senior college analyst on the phone. Anthony, are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right. Hey, let's start big picture. Which emoji do you think best describes the Texans draft?
You know, through the first 3 picks, I probably would have said the crying emoji, but I think they redeemed themselves just a little bit towards the tail end. So I would say overall, kind of the depressing type of one.
A depressing one? It was that bad?
Yeah, we weren't too fond of what they decided to do with the first 3 picks. But like I said, the last 2 with John Reid and Isaiah Coulter, those were some rebounds there.
Oh, because I have the relieved face right here because, first of all, I was relieved that they actually had a draft. There were no technological issues, although Bill O'Brien was agitated after 1 pick in the 3rd round. But I have a relieved face because I didn't think it was that bad. How about Ross Blacklock? I mean, 40th overall pick, came from that Cardinals deal. Some mocks had him in the 1st round. Does he take the sting out of losing DeAndre Hopkins at all?
Not really, and it mostly boils down to positional value. And quarterback is obviously the most important and valuable position on the football field, but wide receiver and quarterback are the next 2 most valuable. And they really had a lot of, they really need to improve their secondary. And there were a lot of good cornerbacks on the board. There's Christian Fulton and Jalen Johnson, which I don't know how they slipped down as far as they did to 50 and 61. But when you're looking at the interior defensive line, that was a priority for them, and they certainly did address it with Ross Blacklock, but there was also better interior defensive linemen, like Jordan Elliot out of Missouri. He would have been a far better pick in our eyes. He was more of a first-round talent, while we had Ross Blacklock towards the end of the 2nd round. And it's mostly all it has to do with, his production. He didn't really have a really good production at TCU. He has the athleticism you covet and that you really want on the interior, but there really wasn't a whole lot of technical proficiency with him.
Jordan Elliot, a Houston kid, by the way. So you would have gone defensive back if you were in that war room and making the picks?
Oh, most certainly, yeah. I mean, their secondary, it wasn't terrible last season, but there were certainly some areas they needed to address, and they did do that with John Reid, which I thought was a good pick for where they were. I think he's going to bring some value to the secondary. But yeah, there were some good cornerbacks on the board there for him. And at that point, you should go best player available. And it was at that moment in time was Christian Fulton, who was 12th on our big board.
What's the ceiling on an edge rusher like Jonathan Granard? Because it appears he was a bit of a reach in that 3rd round.
Yeah, we had him actually as our 167th best prospect in the entire draft class. And really, he did have good production this past year. He had an 88.0 pass rush grade, which is really good. But a lot of his best reps came against weak competition. And it really has to boil down to his athleticism. We don't really think, he can get by in the NFL with that athleticism and his get off. I mean, his 10-yard split at the combine kind of verified that. It was around 1.7 for that position. That's really not that good.
John Reid, cornerback from Penn State, you mentioned him. Is he the guy picked among those day 3 prospects, which you believe will make the biggest impact?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I mentioned earlier, with Jonathan Granard and Ross Blacklock, how they kind of reached on those guys, but they got really good value in John Reid. He was 100th on our big board, and they got him at 141. But it was kind of interesting because, we thought he'd be better fit in his zone scheme because of his sharp instinct. Instead, the Texans run a lot of man coverage. So I'm kind of curious to see, how that really is going to go. But he did thrive in his limited man coverage reps this past year. He allowed only 6 catches on 18 targets while making 6 plays on the ball in man coverage. But we just really didn't see a whole lot of it. So I think he's actually one of the more intriguing rookies I'm going to watch over the course of this next season just because of that. I want to see how he fits really in that scheme. So I think that was really one of the better picks of day 3, actually.
I'm actually intrigued by Charlie Haack because the Texans gave up 3 draft picks to move up to get him. Certainly he has the bloodlines. He has size, although I'm wondering if that size works against him in some ways. What kind of player could Haack become for the Texans?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. He definitely has the size at around 6'8". You look at him on the sideline, you think this guy must be a good football player, but he really isn't. He's really not that menacing to face as he is. There's a lot of issues with his pass protection, and he only had a 74.1 pass block grade this past year, which really isn't that good. I mean, we had him 248th on our big board and kind of slotted in that 7th to UDFA range. So while he does have the size, he just really didn't fare well. And when we saw him on those true pass sets, it kind of got exposed a little bit.
This is not good news, Anthony. You know that. This is not good news you're giving Houston.
I know. Like I said, John Reid and Isaiah Coulter, he's a small prospect guy, but he can separate at a high level, and he's a huge deep threat with his speed.
While I have you here, Jalen Hurts is a local guy for us. Philadelphia, did that make the most sense for him? And what kind of quarterback can he be when you have Carson Wentz in front of him?
Yeah, it really didn't make sense at all. I mean, if you told me before the NFL draft that Jalen Hurts was going to get drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles, I would have said you're crazy. There's no way that's going to happen. It really doesn't fit, what they're doing right there, right now with Carson Wentz. But I'm excited to see how he progresses as an NFL quarterback because I think he can be a very good starter. I mean, I think he offers a lot more value than Jordan Love, who the Green Bay Packers took in round 1. And really the big concern with Jalen Hurts was, how he's going to handle NFL pass rushers because he had one of the longest time to throws we've ever seen. It was right around 3.1 seconds, which was over 0.2 of a second more than any other college football quarterback last year. But he can create outside the structure, and as we all know, he has phenomenal mobility. So I think he brings a lot of value there. And, I think Doug Peterson saw this guy, and I actually wrote an article a few months ago breaking down about how much of a threat he was on RPO, run pass option plays. And I think Doug Peterson saw that and kind of got excited. With Carson Wentz's injury history, he probably thought, if he can get a guy like that, or even, kind of like what the Saints do with Taysom Hill, we've heard that within the last few days when they picked him, bringing in for, sub packages there and kind of seeing, catching the defensive off guard. And I think that's really what he's going to do there and get creative with it. So while I would kind of like to see him go to a quarterback needy team and kind of see him more in a full-time starting role. I do kind of like the fit for him if he gets on the field, but I'm excited to see how his NFL career ends up because I really like him.
And the Houston area had 4 first-round picks: CeeDee Lamb, Kayvon Chason, Kenneth Murray, Jordan Brooks. Of those 4, which one landed in the best spot, do you think?
Oh, without question, CeeDee Lamb. And, he and the Dallas Cowboys both got really lucky because there's no way the NFL team should have let him be there at the 17th overall pick. He was 6th on our big board. He's actually the 3rd best wide receiver prospect we've ever evaluated behind Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy, actually. And, when you're going to a quarterback like Dak Prescott, who was one of the most valuable quarterbacks, might add, last season, I think he's in a really good situation, especially with playing alongside Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. I mean, that offense is going to be legit, one of the best in the NFL next season.
This virtual draft that we just experienced, I actually liked it. I found it more relatable. What did you think of how it was presented on television, and would you like to see something like this happen again?
Oh, I agree. It definitely felt relatable. Hearing some of the general managers and coaches talking about it after the draft in their press conferences, they felt the same way. It was kind of a wake-up call to some, like they don't have to work some of these crazy hours and, sleep in the office. Like they can actually get, be productive at home. So I think this was a really good thing. And I would agree. I would like to see kind of something like this, more often in the future. I think, it kind of emphasizes the family aspect of it when you're seeing some of their kids on the TV. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Anthony Treash, senior college analyst from Pro Football Focus. Right now, yearly subscriptions at join.pff.com. Anthony, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.